One. Hey everyone, Dom Nicastro, managing editor of CMSWire, and we are here with a couple of Steves, Steve O, Steve B, Steve Olenski, and Steve Barnes. Steve Olenski is a CMSWire contributor. Thank you, by the way, Steve O. Appreciate that, coming back to us and writing great content. And Steve Barnes is an interviewee. He was Q&A'd up with Steve Olenski for this very important article, a very important topic on web accessibility. Let's start with each of you giving a little, hey, this is who I am kind of thing. So Steve O, we'll start with you.
Well, first off, thanks for having us, Dom. It's greatly appreciated. So I'm a kind of jack of all trades. I think I even have the word unicorn, Dom, in my bio on CMSWire. Yeah. So I've done everything from creative directors at agencies. I wrote for Forbes for 10 years. I've done work with companies like Oracle and MMA Global with the Mobile Marketing Association. Done a lot of different things in my life, and I've gotten to know and meet so many amazing leaders, CMOs, celebrities, athletes, you name it. The gentleman on this call is on that list for sure of just really good, smart people. So I've been blessed, and I don't want to take up any more time because I'll keep talking. So thank you.
No, I appreciate that, Steve O. And Steve B, Steve Barnes of Barnes Creative Studios. I'd love to know a little bit more about you and your role.
Sure. Thanks for having both the Steves on, Dom. Really appreciate it. Barnes Creative Studios is my production company. We primarily focus on commercial real estate and hospitality with content creation of all kinds. And then the last several years, we've gotten involved with ADA compliance, which came about from a very large brand having issues with this. And we couldn't find a way to fix it. Kept looking and looking. And so we created one. And that's kind of why we're here today.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you here today, kind of being part of this CMSWire content family today. And Steve, Steve O, we'll start with you. I mean, you can feel the passion in your writing. I love how you tap people that are in the trenches. You get leaders, marketing leaders, brand leaders to talk to you. And you certainly did that today in this column with the Q&A with Steve B. So what was the passion particularly with this one, behind web accessibility, and the reason you tapped Steve Barnes for this?
Well, it's a topic that I'm extremely passionate about. I mean, I know, and everybody, I think, either knows somebody or knows somebody who deals with some kind of disability, right, in their life. So we're all touched by this, or at least we know people who are touched by this, right? And I've always been one to, I have a responsibility with my platform to share stories like this, right? To not only bring it to people's attention from a marketing perspective, from, in this case, just a humanity perspective, right? And when I researched the topic and I was talking to Steve Barnes, I knew he was, quote, involved in this, but I had no idea the depth of it. I mean, he's an absolute expert in the field. And as you'll see by the Q&A, I'm very much a big believer in teeing up thought leaders and giving them my platform to share their knowledge. So this, I've done it my whole career. So this was no different.
Yeah, no, and it's a perfect topic for it. And Steve B, what are some of those common trouble spots we see with web accessibility? I couldn't believe what you were telling me off air about the knowledge some folks have about this. It's nil, some of them. I mean, they're putting brand content out there, and the level of knowledge is not quite there for everyone. So what are some of those common trouble spots you see with brands?
The common trouble spots are, the biggest one is education. A lot of people don't realize that this is not a choice. It's not something you get to decide if you want to do in making your content available to everyone. It's a law. And it's, you'll find yourself in court, and you can check sites like accessibility.com, which was mentioned in Steve-O's article. They have a running tab of lawsuits. It will blow your mind how many lawsuits there are. And they range from, they don't discriminate, no pun intended. They go from mom and pops to massive Fortune 500 companies. And they are like, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. And usually the marketing department is the one that gets the first contact because they're in charge of the website most of the time. But the problem falls off where third parties are creating websites for these marketers, handing them back over with no agreement in place for compliance. So what happens is when the lawsuit comes in, it doesn't go to the developer, it goes to the domain owner. So all of a sudden you've got a bunch of people, and I've seen these meetings where they're like, how could this have happened? You've got to start way back at the beginning and plan for this accessibility now that you're aware of all the lawsuits. And you just can't sit around and hope it's going to just go away, because the lawsuits are up year over year.
Yeah. As you're thinking about this, I'm thinking of writing down web accessibility is more than just the alt tags, right? I mean, because that's what a lot of people think. It's just like, okay, no, I'm cool. I put in girl at a baseball field, so I am never going to be sued because I put that in. It's just not the case.
And what's interesting is if you do a technical audit, one of these sites, they say, put your domain in and hit the button and we'll tell you how accessible you are. They might give you a 95 score, but that's because there's not a human checking the context of your alt tags. So while you may have an alt tag that says car, you've got to have, imagine you're writing for someone blind or with, low vision. You've got to describe that scene. That is what the alt tag is for. But alt tags, while they're cited a lot in lawsuits, that's just the beginning. And it can be overwhelming, especially if you're like a real estate site that may have 50 images per listing. You've got to do one for every image. And the usual reaction is, who would do that? And then I just send a link sometimes to the 10,000 lawsuits that are just around alt tags from the last year and a half. And they go, oh, but it's, it's more than just the website. You've also got to think about third-party media. And that's where we come in. We focus on Matterport virtual tours, YouTube videos, things that you don't have control of because they're hosted on this big third-party platform. But it's not the third-party platform who is to blame. It's you for putting your content on there and then putting it on your website. So there's a lot of education around that.
Yeah. Yeah, and marketers are the ones that are leading the charge with content and putting it out there. Like you said, marketing gets pulled into this. And Steve, I'll kick it to you. You have a passion for, giving messages and talking to CMOs, chief marketing officers. So what would be your message with web accessibility and leadership that CMOs need to take with this?
It's a great question. And I think the first message would be, don't think this doesn't apply to you, right? And kind of a 1B to that is, don't assume it's being taken care of by someone under you, right? Get in there, be hands-on. And then the third part of that is, don't assume, to Steve Barnes's point about, you're not just, quote, checking the box, if you will, slapping up a logo on a window in a store that says we're ADA compliant and I'm done, right? It's so far, as you see in the article in Steve Barnes's words, it's so much deeper than that, right? And unfortunately, the lawsuits are a great example, and I think they're going to keep going, because so many brands either have their head in their sand willingly or unknowingly, right? They're coming, right? If you don't address this, no one is immune to this, nor should they be immune to this. So the message is to CMOs, you better find out what you're doing right now on your site and your properties, right? Because if you don't, they're coming, and they should. So that's my message.
Yeah, it's funny, Steve.
Ahead,
I've
Steve.
spoken to 3 CMOs just today. One was for a university, one was for a major retailer, and one was for a real estate area type site. And these are all people we've had conversations with in the past. And what's happening is they're taking advice from peers on how to solve. And when you say check the box, I say these are the ones trying to throw what's called a layover on top of their website and call it a day. That's a Band-Aid, and it's just purely a facade. If you look at what the courts have said, they have said that those layovers are not deemed accessible. And there is a settlement against ADP that late last year was published. And it clearly states and even names some of the companies. They say that those are not going to cut it.
Yeah, no, it's just that head in the sand thing, right? Sorry, Dom, you were going to say something.
No, I was just taking a sip of my coffee, Steve. Staying caffeinated for this. But But Steve-O, I was thinking in great points because, as you were talking with the CMO angle, I was thinking your last article before this was about the CMO and the CIO relationship.
Yep.
And how that needs to be solid, on point. They need to be best friends pretty much. And I
Yep.
was thinking that applies here because if you were a restaurant that was trying to make everything compliant, ADA compliant, you would have a contractor that was to the letter building everything like ramps and stairs and elevators and all that. That's like the CIO on a digital sense, right? The
Yeah.
CIO is the contractor in digital, right?
Great point. And you're right. The onus doesn't only fall on the CMO, right? It's the CIO, CTO who absolutely has a role in this. And I'm sure, Steve Barnes will agree with that completely, that it's not just one person's responsibility, which actually leads to an interesting point or conversation or topic that you also don't want to make it an assumption if you're a CMO that it's the CIO's responsibility, right? Or vice versa. And I don't know, Steve Barnes, if you've come across that, but I'd be shocked if you haven't, or even if you haven't, that does not exist, where it's kind of that not my problem, someone else.
That we see that a lot. Denial is absolutely the first reaction. And there's kind of a finger pointing. First, it goes from CMO to CIO or CTO, then it goes to third-party platform, and then it bounces back at them. It's really the company. So someone needs to step up. And by the way, this is a great opportunity to be a hero and open your content up to 25% more people just in the US alone, but also to stand for something and to move this narrative forward, because it's not going anywhere. The Department of Justice has made that very clear. If you don't conform to this, you will pay. It is so much cheaper to address it now, grab the team. I'm seeing these in real time. Over the last 2 years, I've been involved with remediating sites for third-party media. They go, why didn't we just do this? And no one ever has an answer. It's because, well, we didn't want to spend the money. We didn't understand it. Look, we help try to get you to understand it by doing things like this interview. Like, we'll talk to you, call us. Even though we have no piece in websites, I'm loving just sharing the information so you're aware.
Yeah. And Steve Barnes will stick with you for the final word. And I'll open the door for Steve-O if you have any last second thoughts. But Steve B, looking at the future, there's so many emerging trends, technologies that marketers, brands are keeping on top of. There's a litany of stuff out there. Is there something particular that they need to be watching in 2023, beyond 2024, when it comes to web accessibility?
Yes, there are a couple things. One thing I mentioned earlier about how the website and your third-party media both need to be looked at independently, because anything you do to that website is not going to affect that third-party media. So pay attention to that, because you could leave yourself vulnerable by doing the right thing for your website, but ignoring content. And the reason that's important is, as you see, the content is ramping up. With COVID, especially in retail, we're seeing a lot of lawsuits in retail right now, in real estate, in universities, because all of that is being pushed online even greater than before. So brands are creating virtual tours at a much higher clip. We haven't even talked about YouTube videos. Those have to be accessible. And I'm not just talking about, oh, we have closed captions, we're good. No, it goes way beyond that. Audio descriptions, transcripts, all of the stuff needs to be there for blind users, or you're going to get stung. But it's just a smart thing to do to save money in the end, to avoid all of this.
Great thoughts, gentlemen. I appreciate it. Steve-O, did you have anything last minute?
No, just to restate my point, that if you're watching this and you're a leader in a given company, don't assume it doesn't apply to you, and don't assume someone else is taking care of it.
Well, it's been great. Thank you. I appreciated the column, Steve-O, and the time you took, Steve B, for his column and this interview. Much appreciated for sharing that with our audience. I appreciate it very much, gentlemen. I hope you have a great day.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
All right, we'll talk soon.